Oh man, I've actually got one for this channel. So a while back I'm fishing for cats in a river down by my house. The river is located in the woods next to a park which is known for having a ton of homeless people camping in it. This is my first time fishing in this spot, so I walk along the edge of the river looking for a good spot. As I'm walking I find this huge homeless camp. It was this big hut thing made of sticks that was filled with empty liquor bottles, a little Spider-Man fishing pole, and a hatchet. I check it out for a little bit and keep walking until I find a spot. Fishing was slow, so I just propped my pole up on a tree and started looking around. As I'm looking I catch something out of the corner of my eye. Upon further inspection, I see that it's a man in a huge black coat with a straggly gray beard, and he's holding something in his hand. I immediately realize that it's the homeless guy from the camp and that he's holding a hatchet. I scramble over to my tackle box and look for a weapon, but all I have with me is my little CRKT with a 3-inch blade. The guy is still walking towards me really slowly as I stand there in terror with a death grip on my little knife. I realize that fighting the guy is an awful idea, so I just grab all my stuff, shove it in my tackle box, and haul ass out of the woods. As I was leaving I heard the guy scream something I couldn't understand, but there was no way I was gonna look back to see. After that little experience, I don't fish in that area anymore. This was a few years ago. My brother, grandfather, and cousin came along. By the way, we lived in Baton Rouge. On some days when we didn't have a spot in mind, we would drive along the levees of the Mississippi River to a place that just looked good or just didn't have people. On this day, however, we drove along this stream that likely led into the Mississippi. I don't remember. We parked the truck and walked along the bank with our poles and chairs in hand and walked upstream. We stopped at this one juicy-looking part that had lots of shade and noticeably lots of shad having a feeding frenzy. Took a minute to get comfortable, but we had lines in the water and constantly had bites. To this day I have yet to have another good fishing day like that, but when it started to get dark everything changed. It just abruptly stopped for what seemed like a random reason. After having a cooler full of fish and no more bits, we started to pack up, when we heard this walking sound with what felt like dragging after each step, then the smell. Oh my God, the smell was so bad. Then randomly this gigantic alligator breaks through the tree line with what seemed like a dead bird in its mouth. We didn't have a good look. The alligator stopped for a second and turned to face my older brother. Guessing because he was the closest, we dropped everything and ran toward the truck and immediately got the F out of there. Looking back, it wasn't as scary as a lot of other stories on here, but in the moment just seemed so scary. My grandfather since died, but we gave the alligator the nickname Jaws because of how big its mouth was. But that's my story. A couple of weeks ago I was driving towards a boat launch on a big lake at around 4:50 a.m. Was trying to get in time for some nice early topwater action. The road as I was closing in was very lonely, with only forests and darkness all around. Eventually, I get to the boat launch, and I see about 5 cars parked on the left side of the entrance. I thought it was kind of weird because if they were going fishing they'd be closer to the shore and not the entrance, but tried not to pay too much attention. I then parked close to the launch for a while to wait on my buddy who was about 20 minutes away, when I decided I might as well start getting my stuff ready. I have an inflatable boat, so I had to get all that going. As I opened my door, I heard a loud voice by where the cars by the entrance were parked, and in Spanish. I'm Hispanic myself, so I understood. I heard, "Jesus Christ, come down here and get the devil out of him," and a group of voices, I couldn't tell if there were 5 or 20 voices, repeated in unison, "Get the devil out of him." I immediately closed my door, turned my car, and sped out of there not knowing what I would see. As I'm going past the parked cars by the entrance, I see 3 guys standing kind of looking inside of one of the cars, and 2 more guys, one on each side of the car, kneeling down with their hands on the floor kind of like preaching. They didn't even look back at me during this. I left as fast as I could and called my buddy to let him know and meet me at a local Sheetz 20 minutes away to wait out the sunrise. I was still shaking when I got to the gas station. When I went back after sunrise, there was no sign of anyone being there. Not a story that personally happened to me, but it happened to my two uncles on their saltwater fishing trip. The story begins in the early 2000s with both my uncles, Uncle Stephen and Uncle Chet, preparing for a saltwater day somewhere in New Jersey. They woke up around 4 to 5 a.m. to set everything up and were on the road. They needed to stop by a bait and tackle along the way, so they pulled off at a bend to stop by a local bait and tackle that was well known by the locals and was along the route to many NJ attractions, so it's well known. They grabbed their gear that was needed and headed back to the car. They decided to take a bathroom break at the bend where they parked their car. The area where they parked their car is a saltwater river inlet that changes with the tide, so they decided to go do business there. Not long into the trek, they smelt something rotting around the area and decided to see what was producing the smell. After cautiously advancing, they found the source of the smell. It was the body of a female in their early 20s or late teens. Since they found the body in an area where there is saltwater, they also discovered that it was being feasted on by small crabs. They told us that the crabs were inside her stomach cavity, mouth, and everywhere. They contacted the police and had their statements taken. Shortly after that, they carried on with their day but rattled. When the day was complete, they headed home. Uncle Stephen began to drift off into his sleep and had a terrifying dream. The slain woman was beckoning to him in his dream. In his recounts, he said that in his dream, it was only him standing in his room while the woman was floating outside his window. The window was on the second story. He said that she had a spectral glow and her voice was lost and yearning for help and rest. He retells the words that came out of the slain woman's mouth: "Please. Please help me. Find the person who did this to me and help me." But Uncle Stephen said to her, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I'm from a different area and cannot help you." He woke from the dream and called Uncle Chet, and said that he also had a dream about a lady. Spine-chillingly he said, "How the F did you know?" Told us that hopefully the police can help with solving the case and help her pass on or go to where after. To this day, I've looked for any updates, and I get shivers from driving past that area. Due to the bait shop not knowing about it, it got bad publicity and closed down. It eventually reopened in 2019 as an antique shop. To this day, they hope that her soul is laid to rest, and the person responsible is brought to justice.